I'm chatting to Ian McGill from UNSW, who received a grant from Energy Consumers Australia to work on his tariff modelling tool to do analysis of tariffs in Australia to help get better outcomes for consumers. He joins me now. Ian, why don't you just quickly start with sharing what was the problem you were trying to solve with this project?
Yeah, sure. Look, thanks, Phil. Look, colleagues and I at the University of New South Wales, we're part of what's called the Collaboration on Energy and Environmental Markets, and we've been working on tariffs for well over a decade. And just to be clear, of course, the tariffs, it's really the components that make up your electricity bill. And almost half of that bill is typically network costs, and then there are the retailer costs sitting on top of it. And a specific change we had here in Australia was a rule change to introduce more cost-reflective tariffs. And the idea then is the tariff just isn't so many dollars a day or how many kilowatt hours you consume over the quarter. It's more about what times do you consume? And the reason is that has big implications for the cost of providing that power to you. And as we were doing our work, we really sort of thought, okay, we're writing papers, we're talking to stakeholders in the industry, but what we're hearing back is, geez, this is interesting, but I've got a different set of questions, all these sorts of things I'd like to do. And from that came the idea, well, let's just build a tool that lets a wide range of stakeholders, really from, an interested household, but particularly consumer advocates, people involved in regulators, the network businesses themselves, that helps them better understand what sort of impacts different possible tariffs might have. So that was really the basis of what actually turned out to be two projects with the ECA to develop this tool and make it better.
Firstly, just talk us through how do you actually use the tool? Is it a piece of software? Is it something you download? And what sorts of insights were you kind of hoping to find out that you could reflect back to the energy market and how decisions are made overall?
Yeah, sure. So the first thing is, when you start talking about cost-reflective tariffs, as we were saying, you've got to be thinking about when people are using power and not just how much they use, over a year or something like that. So you need data. You need what's called interval data or half-hour metered consumption data. And a growing proportion of Australian households are on what are called interval meters that provide that data. It depends on which state you're living in. But that's really key. The other thing is, you don't want to sort of pretend there's an average house and sort of do the analysis of that, because households vary so much. They vary. How many kids? What type of housing is it? What's the behavioural habits? Do people work from home more and more? Or is the house empty during the day? So it's really around, the starting point is lots of households, lots of interval meter data. The next thing, obviously, is what the tariffs are. And so we built a big database of pretty much all the network tariffs there were in Australia, and then later added retail tariffs. That's the one you actually see on your bill. Your retailer kind of collects the money for the network for you. You build up that database, and then also, of course, this is a process of change with these tariffs. So you've got to be able to let people explore, well, what happens if we introduce this sort of tariff? This network business is proposing to do it this way. So the tool is downloadable. You download it. You can use data sets we provide, or if you have your own data, as some stakeholders do, the tool lets you use that data. And it basically, you choose any subsets of the data that you want to explore. You might be interested for, one example would be impacts of different tariffs on low-income households versus high-income households. If your data set has that information, you can analyze it. And then what the tool does is it basically just plots out across all of the households sitting in your data set the impacts of different tariffs on the bill, for example. It can then categorize the way that tariff changes would change households' bills. And so it allows quite fine-grained analysis, which doesn't say, okay, well, there's a typical house. It talks about the range of impacts across houses, because this is a big part of changing tariffs and tariff design is, what does it mean for households with 4 kids at home versus other sorts of households, as well as, do they have ducted air conditioning? You know, do they have PV system on the roof? So there's a range of stakeholders using it, and we can talk about the different insights that are coming from it. But in a general sense, the insight from this tool is the complexity of this and the importance that people designing tariffs, network businesses, people reviewing tariffs, regulators, advocates inputting into design processes. The complexity of it means we really need to take a quite broad view of the range of impacts that these tariffs can have on the very wide range of energy consumers who end up paying them.
So it's a really sophisticated tool. Maybe just talk through some of the ways in which you got input from people in the sector who are also working on these sorts of problems, and how you got input from them to make sure that this tool was the most useful it could possibly be.
Yeah. Look, it was a really interesting and important part of the process for us as researchers. Our initial tariff analysis was quite economically focused. It was this idea, okay, well, these are the things that impact on a network's cost to supply consumers. And then the tariffs, and this is how much consumers are paying. Is it a very good fit? You know, do consumers who create a lot more cost because of the way, you know, the loads they have, the way they behave and so on, is that reflected in the way that they pay more than others? But as we engaged with stakeholders, they would often say, well, that's interesting, but there's these other really important questions, such as impacts of different tariffs on households, low income and high income households. And so with the ECA projects, a key part of it was having a steering group which had consumer advocates, the regulator, Australian Energy Regulator was on it, advocates particularly interested in certain aspects of consumer behaviours, so environmental impacts, the implications of households putting on solar systems. So that group was incredibly valuable to us in helping us understand the wider range of questions that tariff analysis involves. We also ran workshops where we invited a whole range of stakeholders, industry, network businesses, the consultants who work with them, consumer advocates and so on. This is what we're doing. What should we be doing? Those were genuine workshops. We would take the inputs from stakeholders and advocates and actually add things to the tool. You know, a big part of these workshops is, geez, I wish we did this.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we can do that. So that was an incredibly important part of the process. The other thing we did was where there were a range of stakeholders who said, look, we want to use this because we do advocacy in this space. But this is a complex tool, something you raised.
Yeah.
We do one-on-one training sessions and just work with them to help them understand how to use the tool for the particular things they wanted to do. So for us, that was a real highlight of working with the ECA in this. It really opened our eyes to a much broader set of questions and concerns around tariffs than where we started.
So on the topic of people in the sector using the modelling tool, do you have some examples about how it's being used, what sort of insights that they're getting and how it's making a difference to, you know, consumers living their lives?
Yeah, look, it's one of the things always when you build a tool is, will they come? You know, if you build it, they will come. Well, maybe they will, maybe they won't. But the ECA process was great for that because when you're working with the stakeholders, you're building something which, is what they want to use because they're inputting into what they want to do. Now, I should say we don't log users. So some online web tools, every time someone fires it up, that's all getting logged. we decided early on that, there are issues of confidential data and particular things stakeholders might want to explore, where, they're unable or really don't want to sort of, have this online portal where everyone's, sees what everyone else is doing. So you download the tool, you can run it completely separately. But what I can say is, we provide support to a number of users who have been using it to make submissions, and a range of insights around it. A particular interest of some stakeholders has been what happens when people put a PV system on the roof. What does that mean for household bills? So, but the insights, I should also say, we've been using the tool with a number of network businesses as well. So it's also been something that we've used in making submissions. We are continuing to further develop it. In fact, one of the things we've done is incorporate parts of the tool into other tools we have. One is called Sunspot, which helps energy users assess, if I put PV on the roof, how do bills change? Will the system pay for itself? Yeah. What about the different tariffs? That may be part of putting that system on the roof. So consumers need guidance, as do advocates for consumers, on what those key opportunities are and the way that different tariffs being offered by retailers and network businesses and so on actually impact on their ability to engage in a useful and meaningful way that saves them money and perhaps helps them do other things they also want to do, such as reduce their environmental footprint and so on.
Well, yeah, I mean, this modelling tool is something that helps take the complexity out of the analysis of how people are looking at tariffs and bills, so it's just a really amazing initiative. If someone wanted to download this tool and use this tool, what's the process? Do they need to reach out to you at UNSW first, or is it something they can access online and just start to use from the outset?
Yeah, look, if you go to the Collaboration on Energy and Environmental Markets, CEEM, as we're called, has a website. And if you Google Tariff Tools CEEM, C-E-E-M, it'll pop up. You can download it and have a play with it. We also put up their reports. We have summaries of the workshops that we ran if you sort of want to understand the process. And if you want to reach out to us, we would be delighted to engage with you, and very, very happy and interested.
Yeah, I mean, that's what makes this such a great project. It's been so collaborative, and you've been having so many touch points throughout the process to make sure that people are getting value, an opportunity to engage, and the tool itself has already been a success, but it sounds like it could also be a starter for broader conversations about solving some of these problems in the energy sector. So Ian, congrats on the work, and thanks for having a chat to us today.
Look, it's an absolute pleasure, and I just also particularly want to name some of the colleagues who I worked with. It was a very collaborative effort with the ECA, but also within our team. So Dr. Anna Bruce, Dr. Navid Hagdadi, and a range of others who are Dr. Mike Roberts, who all were key partners in making this work.
Totally. Congrats to the whole team. We'll post links to where you can find the Tariff tool and the extra information just below this video. So thanks again, Ian.
Thanks, Phil.